Section 35 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Elizabeth Buchanan. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1 by Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencraft Joly. Chapter 16, Part 2. Scarcely had she time to conclude what she had to say, when a youth on duty at the second gate transmitted the announcement that Mr. Chia Cheng was in the library waiting for Mr. Secundus. At these words, Chia Lien speedily adjusted his clothes and left the apartment, and during his absence, lady Feng inquired of P'ing Erh what Mrs. Xue wanted a few minutes back, that she sent Xiang Ling round in such a hurry. "What Xiang Ling ever came," replied P'ing Erh. "I simply made use of her name to tell a lie for the occasion. Tell me, my lady, what's come to Wang Er's wife? Why's she got so bad that there's even no common sense left in her?" Saying this, she again drew near lady Feng's side, and in a soft tone of voice, she continued: "That interest of yours, my lady, she doesn't send later, nor does she send it sooner, but she must send it round the very moment when master Secundus is at home. But as luck would have it, I was in the hall, so that I came across her; otherwise she would have walked in and told your ladyship, and Mr. Secundus would naturally have come to find out about it, and our master would, with that frame of mind of his, have fished it out and spent it, had the money even been at the bottom of a pan full of oil; and were he to have heard that my lady had private means, would he not have been still more reckless in spending? Hence it was that, losing no time in taking the money over, I had to tell her a few words which, who would have thought, happened to be overheard by your ladyship. That's why, in the presence of master Secundus, I simply explained that Xiang Ling had come." These words evoked a smile from lady Feng. "Mrs. Xue, I thought to myself," she observed, "knows very well that your Mr. Secundus has come, and yet, regardless of propriety, she, instead of keeping her at home, sends some one over from her inner rooms? And it was you, after all, you vixen, playing these pranks." As she uttered this remark, Chia Lien walked in, and lady Feng issued orders to serve the wine and the eatables, and husband and wife took their seats opposite to each other. But notwithstanding that lady Feng was very partial to drink, she nevertheless did not have the courage to indulge her weakness, but merely partook of some to keep him company. Chia Lien's nurse, dame Chao, entered the room, and Chia Lien and lady Feng promptly pressed her to have a glass of wine, and bade her sit on the stove couch; but dame Chao was obstinate in her refusal. P'ing Erh and the other waiting maids had, at an early hour, placed a square stool next to the edge of the couch, where was likewise a small footstool, and on this footstool dame Chao took a seat; whereupon Chia Lien chose 2 dishes of delicacies from the table, which he handed her to place on the square stool for her own use. "Dame Chao," lady Feng remarked, "couldn't very well bite through that; for mind, it might make her teeth drop. This morning," she therefore asked of P'ing Erh, "I suggested that the shoulder of pork stewed with ham was so tender as to be quite the thing to be given to dame Chao to eat, and how is it you haven't taken it over to her? But go at once and tell them to warm it and bring it in. Dame Chao," she went on, "just you taste this Hui Chuan wine brought by your foster son." "I'll drink it," replied dame Chao, "but you, my lady, must also have a cup. What's there to fear? The one thing to guard against is any excess, that's all. But I've now come over, not for any wine or eatables; on the contrary, there's a serious matter which I would ask your ladyship to impress on your mind, and to show me some regard, for this master of ours is only good to utter fine words, but when the time to act does come, he forgets all about us. As I have had the good fortune to nurse him in his infancy, and bring him up to this age, 'I too have grown old in years,' I said to him, 'and all that belong to me are those 2 sons, and do look upon them with some particular favour.'
With anyone else, I shouldn't have ventured to open my mouth, but him I anyway entreated time and again on several occasions. His assent was, of course, well and good, but up to this very moment he still withholds his help. Now, besides from the heavens has dropped such a mighty piece of good luck, and in what place will there be no need of servants? That's why I come to tell you, my lady, as is but right, for were I to depend upon our master, I fear I shall even die of starvation."
Lady Feng laughed. "You'd better," she suggested, "put those two elder foster brothers of his both under my charge. But you've nursed that foster son from his babyhood, and don't you yet know that disposition of his? How that he takes his skin and flesh and sticks it not on the body of a relative, but on the contrary, on that of an outsider and stranger. Tu Chia Lien, which of these foster brothers, whom you have now discarded, isn't clearly better than others? And were you to have shown them some favour and consideration, who would have ventured to say don't? Instead of that, you confer benefits upon thorough strangers, and all to no purpose whatever. But these words of mine are also incorrect, eh? For those whom we regard as strangers, you, contrariwise, will treat just as if they were relatives." At these words, every one present in the room burst out laughing. Even nurse Chao could not repress herself, and as she invoked Buddha, "In very truth," she exclaimed, "in this room has sprung up a kind-hearted person. As regards relatives and strangers, such foolish distinctions aren't drawn by our master, and it's simply because he's full of pity and is tender-hearted that he can't put off anyone who gives vent to a few words of entreaty and nothing else." "That's quite it," rejoined lady Feng, smiling sarcastically. "To those whom he looks upon as relatives, he's kind-hearted, but with me and his mother, he's hard as steel."
"What you say, my lady, is very considerate," remarked nurse Chao, "and I'm really so full of delight that I'll have another glass of good wine; and if from this time forward your ladyship will act as you think best, I'll have then nothing to be sorry for."
Chia Lien did not at this juncture feel quite at his ease, but he could do no more than feign a smile. "You people," he said, "should leave off talking nonsense, and bring the eatables at once, and let us have our meal, as I have still to go to the other side and see Mr. Chia Chen to consult with him about business." "To be sure you have," ventured lady Feng, "and you shouldn't neglect your legitimate affairs. But what did Mr. Chia Chen tell you when he sent for you just a while back?"
"It was about the visit of Yuan Ch'un to her parents," Chia Lien explained.
"Has, after all, permission for the visit been granted?" lady Feng inquired with alacrity.
"Though not quite granted," Chia Lien replied joyously, "it's nevertheless more or less an accomplished fact."
"This is indeed evidence of the great bounty of the present emperor," lady Feng observed smirkingly. "One doesn't hear in books, or see in plays, written from time to time, any mention of such an instance, even so far back as the days of old."
Dame Chao took up again the thread of the conversation. "Indeed it's so," she interposed, "but I'm in very truth quite stupid from old age, for I've heard every one, high and low, clamouring during these few days, something or other about Xing Qin, or no, Xing Qin, but I didn't really pay any heed to it; and now again, here's something more about this Xing Qin, but what's it all about, I wonder?"
"The emperor at present on the throne," explained Chia Lien, "takes into consideration the feelings of his people. In the whole world there is, in his opinion, no more essential thing than filial piety, maintaining that the feelings of father, mother, son and daughter are indiscriminately subject to one principle, without any distinction between honourable and mean. the present emperor himself, day and night, waits upon their majesties, his father and the empress dowager, and yet cannot, in the least degree, carry out to the full his ideal of filial piety. The secondary consorts, meritorious persons and other inmates of the palace, he remembered, had entered within its precincts many years back, casting aside fathers and mothers, so how could they not help thinking of them? Besides, the fathers and mothers who remain at home must long for their daughters, of whom they cannot get even so much as a glimpse, and if through this solicitude they were to contract any illness, the harmony of heaven would also be seriously impaired. So for this reason, he memorialized the emperor his father and the empress dowager that every month, on the recurrence of the 2nd and 6th days, permission should be accorded to the relatives of the imperial consorts to enter the palace and make application to see their daughters. The emperor his father and empress dowager were forthwith much delighted by this representation, and eulogized in high terms the piety and generosity of the present emperor, his regard for the will of heaven, and his research into the nature of things. Both their sacred majesties consequently also issued a decree to the effect that the entrance of the relatives of the imperial consorts into the palace could not but interfere with the dignity of the state and the rules of conventional rights, but that as the mothers and daughters could not gratify the wishes of their hearts, their majesties would, after all, show a high proof of expedient grace, and issue a special command that, exclusive of the generous bounty, by virtue of which the worthy relations of the imperial consorts could enter the palace on the 2nd and 6th days, any family, having extensive accommodation and separate courts suitable for the cantonment of the imperial bodyguard, could, without any detriment, make application to the inner palace for the entrance of the imperial chair into the private residences, to the end that the personal feelings of relations might be gratified, and that they should collectively enjoy the bliss of a family reunion. After the issue of this decree, who did not leap from grateful joy? The father of the honourable secondary consort Chou has now already initiated works in his residence, for the repairs to the separate courts necessary for the visiting party. Wu Tianyu, too, the father of Wu, the distinguished consort, has likewise gone outside the city walls in search of a suitable plot of ground. And don't these amount to well nigh accomplished facts?" "Ami tofu!" exclaimed dame Chao. "Is it really so? But from what you say, our family will also be making preparations for the reception of the eldest young lady." "That goes without saying," added Chia Lien. "Otherwise, for what purpose could we be in such a stir just now?" "It's of course so," interposed lady Feng smiling, "and I shall now have an opportunity of seeing something great in the world. My misfortune is that I'm young by several years, for had I been born 20 or 30 years sooner, all these old people wouldn't really be now treating me contemptuously for not having seen the world. To begin with, the Emperor Tai Su, in years gone by, imitated the old policy of Shun, and went on a tour, giving rise to more stir than any book could have ever produced; but I happen to be devoid of that good fortune, which could have enabled me to come in time." "Ai ya ya!" ejaculated dame Chao. "Such a thing is rarely met with in 1,000 years. I was old enough at that time to remember the occurrence. Our Chia family was then at Ku Su, Yangtou, and all along that line, superintending the construction of ocean vessels, and the repairs to the seaboard. This was the only time in which preparations were made for the reception of the Emperor, and money was lavished in quantities as great as the billowing waters of the sea." This subject once introduced, lady Feng took up the thread of the conversation with vehemence. "Our Wang family," she said, "did also make preparations on one occasion. At that time, my grandfather was in sole charge of all matters connected with tribute from various states, as well as with general levies, so that whenever any foreigners arrived, they all came to our house to be entertained, while the whole of the goods brought by foreign vessels from the two Qing provinces, from Fujian, Yunnan and Xueqin, were the property of our family."
"Who isn't aware of these facts?" ventured dame Chao. "There is up to this day a saying that 'in the Eastern Sea there was a white jade bed required, and the Dragon Prince came to request Mr. Wang of Qing to give it to him.' This saying relates to your family, my lady, and remains even now in vogue. The Chen family of Jiangnan has recently held, oh, such a fine old standing! It alone has entertained the Emperor on 4 occasions. Had we not seen these things with our own eyes, were we to tell no matter whom, they wouldn't surely ever believe them. Not to speak of the money, which was as plentiful as mud, all things, whether they were to be found in the world or not, were they not heaped up like hills, and collected like the waters of the sea? But with the 4 characters representing sin and pity, they didn't however trouble their minds."
"I've often heard," continued lady Feng, "my eldest uncle say that things were in such a state, and how couldn't I believe? But what surprises me is how it ever happened that this family attained such opulence and honour."
"I'll tell your ladyship, and all in one sentence," replied nurse Chao. "Why, they simply took the Emperor's money and spent it for the Emperor's person, that's all! For what family has such a lot of money as to indulge in this useless extravagance?"
End of section 35.